that's probably better than a professor's ever thought they could do before. The 2U educational experience is exceptional. We start with an online platform that frankly is supposed to be a social network so that students around the world can communicate no differently than they're communicating today, but we provide a way for them to do it in an educational environment. The learning experience starts with content that students can review on their own. We've talked about this earlier today. It's the flipped model. Students study on their own, asynchronously learning the content, and then they go to class. It's critical. They sit in a classroom with a professor, with other students. They talk Socratically, they dialogue, they learn from each other. But the time is spent not on a professor lecturing, that's done before they walk in. And then finally, because it is a key to learning, all of our programs involve students leaving the online classroom and going into the real world, doing internships or various placements that allow them to use what's learned in the classroom. The wrong way to deliver online content is to put a camera in the back of the classroom and just film the professor. Yet that's what a lot of programs do. What we try to do is be innovative in the asynchronous content that students study on their own. At a minimum, we can do something simple like this. We put a professor in the right corner of the screen. The professor talks over his or her content, and the professor can digitize this in a way that makes it interesting to a student, and frankly, a student can watch again and again and hop to where they want to. But that's not good enough. If you're going to develop a course that students around the world, hundreds, maybe thousands, are going to watch, you should invest money in the production so that you have things that you can't do in the classroom. I'd like to show a brief clip from our social work program. This is something that shows how a professor, and the professor starts the clip, can bring something to the learning experience they couldn't do by standing in the front of the room.
Summarization actually is really just an extension of reflective listening.
It helps you show the client that you're listening. And it also helps frame a lot of this information that you've been given.
Jeremy, it's been a while. What's going on?
How much time we got?
How about 15 minutes? Then I'm closing shop for the day.
Okay, I better make this quick. Okay, you know Chris, tattoo artist? Right. Okay, so I got this friend in Vegas, right? And he's got another friend in Vegas who's giving up this tattoo shop. So I heard about it and I thought, awesome, because Chris is just an amazing tattoo artist and we got to do this, you know, we got to get over there and go.
In this first scenario with Jeremy, you have this client who talks a lot.
We're 25 miles out of Barstow and the car just...
So instead of a professor talking about a student or a professor talking about an experience, we can bring the experience into the classroom so that students can watch what happens in the real world. But after all of this asynchronous content, students go to class. They sit in a learning environment just like this, professor, student, other students, all interacting. Professors say this environment is better than the classroom on campus because there's no back room. Everyone is front and center. If you go to the bathroom, there's an empty face for you. And it's in this interaction that you can actually do the learning, discuss and use what goes on in the asynchronous content. The teaching model, though, is a little bit different. To scale, we can't have one professor teaching thousands of students. So we take a lead professor, the subject matter expert. We work with them to develop the content. And then the university scales by hiring professors, frankly, around the world to teach the small group sessions that we have here. Our MBA program at the UNC, which is a top 20 US MBA program, has an accounting professor that teaches every week from Israel. Because there's no reason an Israeli teacher can't teach students around the world using a platform like we have. Our placements are also worldwide. Our social work program and our teaching programs, which are the first ones that we created, have students from around the globe, and these numbers show the places we've actually put students to do on-the-ground learning experiences based on what they've learned in the classroom. Our MBA program doesn't have a placement, so we have worldwide immersions. Students in the MBA program fly to a current common location once a quarter, and they work interactively in real time, in a real place, to use what they've used in the classroom. And it's this combination which creates great learning. Great material students can watch on their own, a very interactive classroom, and then putting this together by putting real-world experiences together. We've talked about MOOCs, and I'm actually going to use a statistic that Rachel was alluding to before. MOOCs are good at delivering content, but they haven't yet succeeded in the kind of success we expect in an on-campus program. In Coursera, a very small percentage of students complete each program, 5%. A Udacity San Jose program, only 29% of the students pass the class compared to 75% of what would go on in a normal classroom. I'm running a little short on time, but I do want to show you some of the outcomes, because I do agree with what Rachel said about outcomes. If you don't measure outcomes, you're not going to create successful education. So in a 2U program, and these are our first 4 programs, students are doing the work. Even though they're dispersed, they're online, they don't have to go to class, they're completing 85% of their mandatory and optional coursework. The students are not only completing the classes, but they're coming back for second semesters and they're graduating. Our online graduation rates are every bit as good as what you'd see in an on-campus program. So even though it's online learning, it doesn't mean it can't be as good or if not better than what goes on in the classroom. Outcomes do matter. Our students in the program fly to campus to graduate. They get jobs. In our teaching program, which is a pretty challenging profession right now in the U.S., over 90% of our graduates have teaching jobs full-time within 6 months of graduation. And the professors are raving about the platform. They're talking about it as being very effective at being able to communicate with their students. We use a Net Promoter Score, which is complicated, but in some ways pretty simple. It measures student satisfaction, their ability to recommend a program, from a negative 100 to 100. So it's not a 0 to a 100 scale, it's a negative 100 to a 100 scale. Our professors are saying that the program would earn a 70 for them. Our students are saying it would earn a 60. I compare this to world-class brands like Google and Apple, which actually get lower student satisfaction. Why? Great education delivered very conveniently to the students. Putting this all together, the mission of 2U is to work with universities to develop online programs that are not easy, that are not